All right, so as mentioned previously, we are here for AI integration for educator practical tools and ethical considerations. Our presenter today is Jessica Bernards. Jessica Bernards is an award-winning mathematics educator and consultant with 2 decades of experience. She teaches at the University of Oregon and Portland Community Colleges and is the founder of Jessica Bernards Consulting, where she partners with institutions and organizations on equitable grading, leadership, and AI in education. Jessica served as the Northwest Vice President of AMATYC, makes keynote presentations at national conferences, and leads faculty workshops. A curriculum consultant, textbook author, and creator of a math study skills series, she champions active and inclusive learning. Thank you so much for being here, Jessica, and sharing your expertise. I'm going to stop sharing and let you take over.
Thank you. I'm so sorry I was a minute late. I was telling Kelly, this is so not like me. I'm normally so on top of everything. My school is in its third week of striking. It's the first community college strike in all of Oregon. And so I have everything on my work calendar and forgot to bring it over to my personal calendar now that I'm not allowed to check my work calendar. So thank goodness Kelly texted me, and I'm so glad to be here. I'm going to start sharing my screen. And so just so everyone knows, I'm going to do share entire screen here. I do have a couple of slides in here where I normally would have you all kind of thinking these things through and working together. But because this is a webinar, it's going to be a little bit tougher to do that. So I'm going to have people kind of work a little bit individually. You'll have a few minutes to work on some things and then kind of share out. So one of the things that I wanted to first start with is just making sure that we're all on the same page with AI. So we're going to start with effective prompting just to learn how to prompt well. And that's going to also help you if you start to bring this into your classroom, do that as well with your students. And then we'll talk about AI for lesson planning, AI for grading, AI for communication, and then really how to teach students how to use AI appropriately. So we'll start out first with just effective prompting. And so I want to show you guys just a few things about a good prompt versus an okay prompt. So this is in what we would consider an okay prompt. If we just say a lesson plan about multiplying fractions for fifth graders. This isn't that great because we don't say how long the classroom is. We don't say what we want in the lesson plan. We're not saying what we're like all of the different, if we wanted active learning, if we wanted straight lecture. This one is definitely a better one. Act as an expert mathematician and a teacher skilled in designing engaging learning experiences for upper elementary students. So now we're giving the AI an actual role. We're telling them that we want them to be a math teacher and a teacher. Sorry, mathematician and a teacher. And also, I'm so sorry. Um, we want it to be an engaging learning experience. So now we're adding a lot more into this. We're giving it a role, we're giving it some context, and we're asking for some specifics. I'm going to shut this door really quickly. All right, now you guys won't hear dogs barking like crazy. Um, Now this is a much better one. So you can see here the difference between these three is now we're telling it, again, we're giving it that role as an expert math teacher. Now we're also saying universal design for learning. So we're bringing in that accessibility piece, that community piece. If you have not looked up universal design for learning before, the UDL framework is incredible and I highly recommend I have a presentation I actually do over that, but definitely take a look at that. And now we're asking it to do an accessible lesson plan for fifth grade students that are interested in soccer. So we're giving it a lot more specifics. The lessons should include a hands-on activity and frequent opportunities for collaboration. Format your response in a table. So you can see the difference between that okay one, where it was just very generic. We're probably not going to get exactly what we want to get out of the output. Whereas when we look at this best one, now this is a much more specific and much more what we're looking for. I use this all the time when I go in to create lesson plans for my classroom, where if I want to do the active learning, maybe have a math maze or a station maze, or I've created a logarithmic board game using AI, an escape room. And so really giving it that. So the biggest thing is we're giving it the context. So I call this craft for prompting. So C is for that context. R is giving it a role. A is giving it like an action plan. So what do we want it to do? What's the action we want AI to do for us? So here we want it to create a really fun, accessible lesson plan about multiplying fractions. F is what format do we want it to come out in? And you can see in this best, it's formatting it as a table. And then T is what's the tone? And so the tone is a really important factor when we're having AI give us an output because a lot of the times it can be cold. And I want it to be fun and engaging. So I'll tell it, like, be fun and engaging. Come up with something that's super fun that students will be into. And this slide, by the way, came from this incredible website that's called AI for Education. You can see it in the upper right-hand corner. I highly recommend taking some time after this webinar to look at all of the resources that they have. It's completely free, it's a nonprofit, and they have just amazing things. Okay. So what I want you to do, normally we're at a table because we're in person, or I can put you guys in Zoom rooms. But what I'm going to have you do is pick one of these prompts and think about it yourself. And how could you take one of these prompts and turn it into a good prompt? So not just an okay, right now these are okay, but how could we make them better so that we're going to get the output that we want from the AI? So again, using that craft framework. So again, that craft is you give it a context, you give it a role, you tell it the action you want it to do, how you want it to be formatted, and then the tone. So go ahead and pick one of these three. I'm going to give you guys about 2 minutes to go through and come up with how could we write these better. All right. Anyone want to share an idea that they came up with of how to make it better? You can just unmute yourself and go ahead and chat, start talking. Oh, sorry, I just heard someone said the craft acronym in the chat. No problem. All right, so Lewis said for the trigonometry one, where it says generate problems for trigonometry. So when I look at that one, that output, AI output, could be so many different things, and I'm not sure what. We haven't told it how many problems we want it to be. We haven't told it, do we want it to be application problems? Do we want them to be easy, hard, medium? We really haven't given it a really good context for this. And so I'm going to read what Lewis's is and then I'm going to read Mike's. So it was generate a scaffolded approach. I love this. To trigonometry problems, starting with basic identity recognition to having to do some trig identities for a second semester pre-calculus course, just learning about how to solve trig equations. That's great. That's a really good one. And Mike had, you are an experienced community college math instructor implementing a building thinking classroom framework in your teaching. Oh, I love it because we all, I think, here love BCT. Generate 6 prompts for trigonometry students to work on in groups for solving trig equations that build from simple solution strategies to more complicated. That is phenomenal. Anyone else have anything else? Okay, so Kelly just said use the debate math framework to provide students a quadratic equation that could be solved by multiple ways to use in class. I didn't remember all the letters. So, oh, sorry. So I'm missing some stuff. So yeah, so with that one, I love it. So we want to say you are we're going to give it the context. So you are a math professor, and I'm going to do the role at the same time. So you're a math professor teaching at a community college. Um, right now the students are learning about quadratic equations. Please use the debate math framework to provide students a quadratic equation that could be solved in multiple ways in class. Um, Please give your the solution as well with the worked out examples. So we're telling it a little bit more. What I found when it comes to AI, especially in math, is it can do things wrong. I'm sure a lot of us have noticed. So a few tips I wanted to share about that. And Kelly, if you want to type these in the chat, go for it. So some of my tips are that if you ask it to create problems, practice problems, or if you ask it to create a lesson, you want to tell it to give step-by-step worked out solutions to any problem that's within it. When you ask it to do step-by-step solutions, it will catch if it's created a problem that can't be solved, and it will also catch if its solution that it came up with is wrong or not. Where if you just tell it to give you the answer, there's a lot of times that it can hallucinate, where if you tell them to show you all of the steps, it will usually catch itself if it starts to hallucinate and fix that hallucination. So just a little tip on those. The other really cool tip, so on top of that craft framework, which I'll write again in here, is at the end of your prompt to ask, I'm going to putting this in the chat right now. So is there anything else you would need from me so I get the best output? What's really cool about adding that sentence to the end of any prompt that you put into AI is that it will end up telling you exactly if you're missing any part of that craft framework, what it is. It will ask you some more clarifying questions. So, for example, how long is your class? How long or hard of a problem do you want this to be? It ends up helping you, A, get a much better output, but B, also start thinking about better ways to prompt. So your prompt engineering is going to get so much better every time you use that last sentence in there. It's going to have less things it'll end up asking you about. Um, Oh, that's a good one. How can we get good projects for quantitative reasoning courses? I love that you just asked this question because this is going to lead into my next little part. And I have created some really cool projects that are very authentic assessment with really great rubrics using AI. So let's kind of talk a little bit about that. Before we get into that lesson planning, though, I do want to talk about some of the main AIs that are out there and the good and the bad. So this first slide just shows this is one of the publishers. The publishers are now starting to bring in AI. So if you're using a publisher book, this one I think is from Pearson. But I know that they've got those AIs now embedded in a lot of their online platforms. So definitely look for that. But when it comes to for us for using AI, Perplexity is one of the big ones that's out there now. A lot of people haven't heard of. I always start with this one because this one, in my opinion, is one of the better ones. And if you have a PayPal account or if you have a Venmo, you can get Perplexity Pro for free for a year, which is huge. So if you just Google PayPal Perplexity Pro free, it will take you right to that link that you need to use to be able to get that free access. What's great about Perplexity, and I like to have my students use Perplexity if we're using it at all in class, is that it shows its thinking. It talks you through as it's doing its thinking. It's telling you what it's doing. So you're really seeing that process. On top of that, it has links when it gives you an output to every single source it pulled from. So you can go and look at those sources and see if they're good sources or if they're bad sources. So that's the first thing. And then we also have Claude. Claude is one of my favorite ones to use when it comes to writing. It does a phenomenal job of writing emails for communication. The free version is just fine for that. They do have a paid version. The paid version is incredible if you need to use it for coding. Their coding is amazing, as well as creating documents and all of those different pieces. I always show Grammarly on here, not because I think it's a good AI, but I want to make sure that people are aware of this. So a lot of us, like I used to, especially in my liberal arts math class and quantitative reasoning classes, I always have them do these authentic assessments where they have to do research, write a paper, all these things. And so I've always said you can use Grammarly on that to help with grammar, spelling, sentence structure. Unfortunately, now Grammarly has AI built into it. And it literally is an extension straight on Google Docs and straight on Word as well. And so I now have had to put a syllabus statement in saying you cannot use Grammarly um, other than for grammar and punctuate and spelling. Because if not, students thought it would think it's okay. And a lot of the times they don't understand that if you take a sentence you've written and then Grammarly AI just like automatically pops up and it rewrites it all, and it's not just rewriting it all, it's also adding in their opinions and their ideas, not what the student had originally in there, that's plagiarism. And so it's just a really good conversation to have with your students. Notebook LM. I'm going to get into Notebook LM in a second. This one, if you have not used it, you need to have it on your radar. It is free. I share it with every single student. I even have my seventh grader has his own Notebook LM that I'll show you how cool it is. Gemini is one that we're starting to see a lot more, as well as Copilot. I don't think I have a Copilot one in little tag in here, but Gemini and Copilot are phenomenal. That is what enterprise accounts for schools are using. So, for example, the other ones, Perplexity, Claude, and ChatGPT, don't have enterprise accounts where they are locked down, where your data is not shared out. But Gemini and Copilot do. So a lot of colleges are now contracting out with them to be able to get access for us to those paid versions as well as for students. The one thing I want to pause and talk about with Gemini is that the math equations are not accessible. And if you take it, you can take Gemini. What's super cool about it is you can take the output and you can put it into a Google Doc. Again, the math equations are not accessible. And so our college has sent an email out to Google. I know that I asked AMATYC, the AMATYC board, to do that as well, to tell them they really need to step up their game because as math professors, and especially with these new WGAC laws that are coming into effect, we really need to ensure that what we're using is accessible. And then there's ChatGPT. So Copilot is basically ChatGPT in a way. So Bill Gates bought the rights to OpenAI, so all of the coding for ChatGPT is now also in Copilot. They're screen reader friendly. The outputs are screen reader friendly as well. So those are kind of my ones that I would recommend. Now, I want to get on and show you guys. Let me just grab a fresh one of these pieces. Okay. So I want to show you all Notebook LM because this, in my opinion, is one of the coolest things that you can set up for your students, as well as for yourself. So Notebook LM is completely free if you have a Gmail account. And so you'll just go to Notebook LM, click Try Notebook LM, and it'll have you sign in, or if you already are signed in with your Gmail, it'll automatically have that. Now, what's really cool about it is we all know that a lot of the times the online and AIs will pull data or hallucinate and create its own data. And we don't want that. And so this is a place where with Notebook LM, it will only pull from the sources that you put in it. So it's not going to search all the web where you might have some random blog and opinion piece that's not true or a made up stuff that the AI made up. And so what's really cool is you can go on here and you can upload files, you can upload websites or YouTube videos. You can go to your Google Drive, you can connect those so it pulls from that. This is where I actually, anytime that I'm having to, a new thing pops up with AI, because we all know AI is evolving. By tomorrow, it's going to be even more something different out there, is I actually have this connected to my Google Gmail, and I have a folder in there that it's connected to that's just called AI. So anytime I get any of my AI listservs, I just throw it into that folder, and then I have it pull from that folder. So again, I know that these are all good sources that are reliable sources. If any of you guys are getting your PhDs right now, this is another great place to go. You can put all of the research articles and papers that you need to read and journals in here by just adding that straight from the sources. And then you can actually now interact with all of that research. And so when you do that, what happens is, so this one I put in an article that was called How to Use AI Ethically as a Student. And so this just gives a summary over it and what the source says. If you have multiple sources, it'll read all of those sources and give a summary of all of them. And then you can ask it questions. So you can see it even has some generic questions here for me to ask, but you can ask it questions and interact with it. And again, this AI is only going to pull from the sources that you feed into it. Now, what's also very neat about this is that you can create, it'll use these sources to create an audio overview, which is like a podcast. So I want to play that really quickly for you to see how good it is. Because again, with AI ever evolving, I don't have time to read all these articles that are hitting my inbox every day, but I do have time to listen to a podcast when I'm on a walk or when I'm driving. And so anytime there's something new, I'll pop it in here and I'll have it create a new audio overview, which is basically a podcast. And then I just listen to it on my way to work when we're back at work, which currently we're not at work. So I'm going to play, let's see if this will play. Sometimes it takes a minute for it to load.
Welcome back to the deep dive. So AI tools, they're everywhere in academics now, aren't they? History, engineering, you name it.
Oh, absolutely. They've gone from like a novelty to
And for
pretty much essential.
ambitious students, the real question isn't if you use
Hang
them.
on, it's
No, it's shifted.
multiple.
It's how.
All right. So what's really cool about this is that you saw that was two people talking to each other and it sounded legit. They had different annotations, different voice structures. It's really engaging. The other thing that's neat is you can actually do interactive mode where you can be a caller and call in and ask the podcast hosts questions, which again, they're going to pull all the answers from the sources that you feed it. Some other really neat things that it does is it will create a slide deck. So it'll create present PowerPoints from your sources, a video overview, which to be frank with you, I'm not a big fan of yet. It's really bad. It's really bad. And the slide deck is really bad too. Same with the mind map. Don't recommend that one. The quiz is neat because it'll go through and create quiz questions for you to do. This is where I have my seventh grader using this for like his Spanish and history that he's learning about. And then it'll also create flashcards, which is also very neat for them. So I'm seeing some questions in here. So I'm just going to look at it really fast. So Notebook LM can actually access YouTube. It does based on the caption. So if they are bad, it won't. Yeah, that's very true. So it's made, so Kelly was talking about how she used Notebook LM to make transcripts from auto-generated captions from videos that she doesn't own, which is, again, huge, especially in this accessibility age that we're about to hit next month. Oh, can we make a podcast of a recorded Zoom meeting? You absolutely can. So you can take that recorded Zoom meeting, pop the MP4 in here or MP3, and then it'll go through and it'll actually create flashcards from a recorded Zoom meeting as well. So it's just a phenomenal website that I really like to have students get their first little into getting into AI because it has these guardrails already on it. All right. Any questions about the main kind of like AIs that are out there? Okay. So I'm going to keep on going. I just realized our time, so I'm going to go a little bit quicker through some stuff. So AI for lesson planning. So before we get into that, just some best practices when you're using AI is making sure that you check for bias and accuracy. So it is a predictive model. So the way that these LLMs are created is they will search the internet and search whatever it's been trained on. But when we think about that, if it's trained on historical data, and we all know that some historical data can be biased, it can continue to perpetuate those biases. So we just need to be fully aware when we're asking it for data, when we're looking at those outputs, that we check to make sure that we're not going to be perpetuating those historical biases. And then we also need to check for accuracy because, again, with how it's trained basically on probability. And so, for example, if you go into any of these AIs and say, can you give me 3 scientific reasons the moon is made of green cheese? I'm not kidding. You can all put this in right now. So give me 3 scientific reasons the moon is made of green cheese. It will come up with 3 very polished, very scientific sounding reasons that it's made of green cheese, but we all know it's not. But because it's based on this predictive nature, it's looking at how scientific studies are written, and it's going to just copy that for its output. And it sounds polished and professional and super confident. However, if you changed your prompt and instead said, "Is the moon made up of green cheese?" it will tell you it's not. The 80/20 approach, just really making sure that you're using, at the most, use 80% of what AI has given you. Always make sure that you're checking it yourself. Your judgment really matters. Make sure you're putting in your own voice. And then the really biggest thing is protecting privacy. So in all of these different AIs, you can go through and tell it to not use your stuff to collect data on or to train the model. All of them are different for where you find that. I recommend you Google it, or you can ask whatever AI you're in, how do I turn off data sharing? And it will show you where to go there to turn that off. I highly recommend doing that. And if also every time you're using it, make sure you're not putting it anything out there that you wouldn't put on like a bulletin board in front of your office. So if we have any student information, don't put anything in there that's identifying. You can say student A or student B. All of those types of things. Don't put in your financial numbers and things like that. In this quantitative reasoning book, I have students go through and look at their credit card statements to figure out where they're spending their money in different categories. And so I had one student upload their actual credit card statement that has their name, their address, their account number. And I was like, no, like you can do that, but you need to X all of that stuff out so it's not reading that and feeding that into the system. This is a great PDF. I actually have this printed out in my office. I put this also on my syllabus. It comes straight from AI for Education, so on that website, where it is how to use AI responsibly every time. So evaluate, verify, engage, revise, and remember that you're always responsible for what you've created. All right, so this is where we'd have time for you guys to get into the AIs to come up with plan an upcoming lesson in your class. Unfortunately, we're not going to have time for that today, but one of the things that I do hope that we do is after this, you guys go and pick one of those AIs to use. Perplexity Pro, again, is a great one because you can get it for free and get the pro version. And with Perplexity, you can also access the paid version of Claude and ChatGPT. They're a little bit stripped down, but they're still pretty good. And so just some ideas for lesson planning. Again, I've used it to create projects. I'll tell it exactly, this is the book I'm using. These are the sections we cover. Here's the objectives for this chapter. Can you create an authentic assessment that's modern, that will really help students take what we've learned and bring it into their everyday life? Create a rubric for it as well. And it's pretty amazing what it comes up with. Will blow you away. The rubrics are incredible. I always tell it to create a proficiency-based rubric. You can do that however you want to do that. It creates math mazes, Jeopardies, escape rooms. I had it create an actual escape room for logarithmic equations where it created this it was a haunted math house. And so the first station was the haunted library in the house. And I had it create an image for it because obviously I'm not going to be able to turn a classroom into an escape room. But I asked it to create an image for each of the different, clues that they were in. And so when they were in the library, math library, it had created the spines of the books had math equations on them, and there were ghosts coming out, and they had to create to solve that logarithmic equation to get the number in the lock that I had for this lock box for them to open to be able to get candy. So I had different rooms. So one was the library, one was the office, one was the master bedroom. So again, each of the different rooms had a clue for them to be able to get the code to break out. That would have taken me hours and hours to create on my own. With AI, it took me all of 10 minutes of just prompting back and forth, which was really neat. All right. Someone just asked for AI generated images. Is there a copyright or a source that would cite? For example, if I create an image for my Canvas class, how do I give credit to the source or at least make clear it wasn't my creation? That's such a great question. We definitely want to always be very transparent about when we use AI. And so there's different ways that you can do that. I always will just put a little note this was created using ChatGPT or this was created using Gemini. So you can always put those little notes in there for your students. In terms of the actual citations, I am going to talk about that once we get into that teaching students to use AI for how to cite that. So that'll give you that as well. So AI for grading. This is always a big thing where people are like, what do we do it for? I personally do not think you should ever upload student work into an AI and have it grade it for you for multiple reasons. A, we're dealing with that privacy issue. We're dealing with copyright now because, like, again, even if we have don't use my inputs and outputs for data, like in revising your AI, we still don't know exactly what happens to what we put in the AI. And unless we have student permission to do that, I think what we're doing is we're feeding this AI their work. So there's some issues with that. There's also some privacy issues. And I do think as an instructor, it's important that we're looking at student work and giving feedback. And so there's two different ways that we can use AI responsibly and ethically to help with grading. So the first thing is rubric generation. So there's so much research and so many studies that shows really having a solid rubric for everything really helps students understand the expectations of what you're looking for. It also helps our first generation students that maybe it's their first time in college. They don't have that, background of what to expect and what the expectations are for us. We have, students from other countries, all of those things. So this having rubrics for everything really helps level that playing field for students. I ended up actually creating rubrics even on my tests and my quizzes where it's just solving a math equation. I will have like 1 point for the correct setup, 1 point for the correct, steps, 1 point for the correct answer, 1 point for units. And so that way, again, it's very clear how they're getting graded. It's very clear why they got the points that they lost on the test. And it also is just a really great reminder for them. So with any of the AIs, I'm going to go into the AI in a second to show you this. They can create a rubric for anything. And so I've gone through, I've uploaded my labs, I've uploaded my projects and just said, create a rubric, 4 point rubric, proficiency-based rubric, that's very detailed over this. Now, anyone that's using Canvas, you can actually really quickly and easily import that into your Canvas or any of the LMS systems. We used to use D2L Brightspace at my college, and it's great and easy to do that. For me, it's actually saved me so much time when I go through to grade because now I'm just checking these boxes and I already have feedback embedded within them. And again, it's just so much more clear for the students. The other thing is this AI, you can use it to create feedback templates. I'm going to show you how that looks. So when we're creating a feedback template, let me I'll just go to ChatGPT. So when we go through and create a feedback template, I can say create a feedback template for this question. And you don't have to like type in each question if you have, let me just do this and then so graph f of x equals x squared minus 4x plus 2. I'm going to put negative x squared. And label all appropriate places. Label the axis of symmetry, vertex, and intercepts. Okay. Create feedback for correct answers and for typical mistakes or misconceptions. Make sure the feedback is positive and use growth mindset language. So what's neat about this is, again, you can upload a lab, you can upload a Word file, whatever you need. And so what's great is that it's going to give us specific feedback that now I can just put this into a Word file and copy paste it anytime I see the same mistake or someone doing it right. If you're like me, you give really great feedback the first like 10 students. By the time you get to the 30th or 40th student, you're just like, oh my God, they did the same thing again with this axis, and you just circle it and you don't give us false, like solid good feedback. And so this makes sure that I'm giving the same feedback to everybody. So here, if the axis of symmetry is incorrect, now I've got a quick little thing that I can substitute in, good progress, identifying this. Remember that the axis of symmetry is determined by the formula. And I can tell it this, in my opinion, this is way too long of feedback, so I can tell it to make the feedback more concise. But again, so now I can just throw this into a Word file, and I have a Word file for every single one of my calculus labs that I do every week, and this is an online class, so it's really important that I'm giving really good feedback to them. And now I can just copy paste each of these into Canvas or into, the document itself. Um, it's just, it's incredible. So, this is, in my opinion, one of the coolest ways for grading. Does anyone have questions about this? Yeah, go for it, Karina.
Yeah, so my question would be like, when you're saying that you copy this into a Word, you're just doing like a snip, or are you downloading
No,
a PDF?
I just copy paste this into Word, this whole
Okay.
thing into a Word file. And you can ask ChatGPT to put it into a Word file for you too. What's nice about ChatGPT is when you copy this into a Word file, it actually uses the Microsoft equation editor for all the equations. So it is accessible, which is very nice. And then again, I've got my feedback template for lab one. So now this term, once we're ever back at school from striking, once we do our lab one, I just have to pull that Word file up and then I just copy paste like, oh, they got the axis wrong, a symmetry wrong, boom, copy paste. So it just is so helpful and powerful. And again, you just can keep on iterative prompting until you get it to give the feedback that you want it to have for your template. But it will make your life so much better, much faster at grading, but also much more quality feedback that we're giving our students. And then the other thing is, yeah, you can ask it to create like different, someone just asked in the chat, great question. Can you have it create a couple of stock messages? So it's not just the same one you're giving everybody. Absolutely. You can just say, generate 3 different feedback options for feedback I could give for each wrong answer. And then that way you're just copying that, or each correct answer. It's really smart and it's really cool what it can do. I wish we had more than the time that we have, because this is normally a 4-hour workshop that I'm doing, and we're doing it in an hour. So normally there's a lot of time for you guys to kind of get in. So that's what's really cool about AI for that. The rubric generation, in my opinion, is one of the coolest features of it. So someone just asked, how could I use this work for graded on paper? Elizabeth just asked that. I think it's just, you'll just copy it down with your hand, obviously. But this way it's a lot easier to hand grade. You know exactly what you're going to say for each student. So AI for communication, this is where I use AI so much. Responding to those hard emails, I actually use it for almost all my emails now. And then student letters of recommendation. We're all math people. We are not. I don't know about you guys. I am like terrible when it comes to writing these. It takes me so long. But I also want to make sure, if I'm like, I want them to be authentic and my voice in there. And I want them to not just be these generic AI letters of rec. And so what I can do is I can go to ChatGPT or whatever AI you want to use, and I can tell it. So let's first start. We'll do the student letter of rec. So write a letter of rec for my online Calculus 1 student who is applying to a 4-year school. She was in my online calc class at PC Portland Community College. She consistently got A's, rarely missed assignments, and always asked questions when she had them. So I'm putting in the specific things I want to say about this student. I could add more here too. And so let's see what this comes up with. Notice I did not put the student name in here. I did put the student pronouns, because it's going to be really hard to go back if you don't put their pronouns in. So notice I used she in there. So again, we don't want to put their name, because then we're putting this personally identifying information in here. So we just need to make sure we go and change anything it says for my student. We're going to put in the student's information. So I'm pleased to write this letter of rec, who was enrolled in my online course at Portland Community College. She was an outstanding student who consistently demonstrated strong work ethic, persistence, and committed to learning. Throughout the term, she earned A grades on her work and maintained a high level of engagement in the course. So what I fed it to it, it wrote it. And you can see this writes it so well. I could put the same thing in again, and it's going to create a different version of this. The other thing that I think now what's interesting is ChatGPT is starting to do what Gemini does, where now I can go through here and I can actually add stuff in here. Do you see that into its output? And it will go through and edit and adjust that for me. And then I can just click this copy and it will copy it straight into a Word file or a Google Doc for me. You can also like highlight it in here and just say ask for changes, and then you can ask AI to change what you want it to change. It's just really powerful, great way to write something very quickly, where it says everything I wanted it to say. Now, the part where I love AI the most is for writing those hard emails. We all have those students, right? Who are like, fail the test and they want extra credit to pass the class or to make up the test, but they haven't been doing the work that they needed to be doing in the first place. So what I want to say is, so here's what I do. Rewrite this. I'm going to start a new chat so it's not thinking I'm still talking about the same student. Rewrite this email. So it is positive and professional. Okay. A student is asking me to give them extra credit to make up for their failing exam grade. The answer is no. I want to say you should have done the regular credit work in the first place, and you wouldn't be in this spot. We can say like, do you guys want me to say they can still pass the class or not pass the class? Not pass the class, is that what I'm hearing, Kelly? Okay. They, at this point, won't be able to pass the class. Tell them not to. So sometimes I'll literally write exactly what I want to say. You should have effing done the regular work. Like if it's the same student that's constantly like doing that and hasn't done any work, it's kind of cathartic to get it out. It feels good, but obviously we don't want to send that to a student. So now it's writing this situation where we've got, thank you for reaching out. I understand that this situation is stressful and I appreciate you checking in. This is way too long. I'm going to ask it to be shorter. Make more concise. Thank you for reaching out. I understand your concern about the exam. I'm not able to offer extra credit beyond the assignments already included in the course. These opportunities were designed to support your grade throughout the term. Based on the current scores, it's no longer mathematically possible to earn a passing grade this term. I know this is difficult news. Many students find that retaking the course allows them to build a stronger foundation and be successful the next time. If you continue participating, focusing on understanding the material will help you move forward. I'm happy to share study strategies or resources if that would be helpful. Great email, right? So a student is not going to look at this and get angry at you afterwards. Like you're being nice, you're being kind, you're telling them like, sorry, you can't pass, but hey, I'm here to help you for next term. So really that would have taken me probably an hour or two to figure out how to write it the right way. All right, before I go back into this other piece, and I know I only have a few minutes left, but I want to show you this AI for Education website. So when you go down to find it, there's two different ones that you're going to see. There's the aiforeducation.org. That's not what you want. You want the one that is .io. So when you click on that, it takes you to this website, which is just a phenomenal website with so many resources. So I always click on the free resources, and when you go down there, you're going to see there's a prompt library for educators that is phenomenal. They do have a free 2-hour AI class. The downloadable resources, that's where you saw those PDFs that I was showing, the good prompt, better prompt. Those are all on there. And then they also have free lessons that you can bring into your classroom to teach students about AI literacy, which none of us have time to do. So that's more for like a high school. But what's really neat is they have these chat prompts. So you can look up if you're doing an assessment, creating an exam, you can go to that one and it'll give you like different ideas. So create alternative assessment formats, Bloom's taxonomy, rubrics. And what's really neat is that when you go in here, there really isn't a thing as AI resistant assessments anymore, just so everybody knows, unfortunately. But what's cool is, so I can go here, let's say I want to do quizzes. is it gives you an actual prompt that you can use, that you just copy and paste the prompt and put it into whatever AI you want to use and put in your information. So it's really powerful that way. One of my seventh graders teachers actually used this to create a really cool activity when they went into lesson planning, where they were going through and being interactive with a story, the main character of the story that they were reading about in their class. And he wasn't, my student was having a hard time like connecting. But when we had it where we asked the AI to be the main character so that we could interview them, my son was able to interview them and finally started to like feel really like be able to connect with that person that much more. There's all of these different lesson planning ideas in here that are just phenomenal that you can bring into your classroom. So many. This is one of my favorite resources. And then again, they have these downloadable resources that you can have. So this is where I actually post this stuff in my syllabus and my online classes. I'll sometimes have them look at one of these and have them do a reflection over it. But there's just some really great pieces in here as well. Okay. I want to go back to just some other things that we can do with AI for students because we have like 10 minutes left. So this is the really fun part, and I'm going to tell you guys where you can find. I actually have posted some of these so you can actually just steal them and use them yourself. So teaching students how to use AI. I always show this slide. Don't look behind you. Normally we're in person, so then like people actually want to look behind them. Obviously, we're not in person, but usually when I show this, people like want to look behind them so much. Like when I say don't look behind you, like all of a sudden they're like wanting to see, well, what's behind me that I should be looking at. And so this is the same thing if we tell students don't use AI, they're going to be more tempted to use it. So we have to find ways that we can bring it in intentionally where we teach them how to use it to enhance their learning versus doing the learning for them. If you go onto my YouTube channel, Kelly, I don't know if you have a second to just find that link. If you just Google my name in YouTube, it'll pop up. I have a bunch of videos on there for both teachers and for students. And the main video that's on there for students is about what happens if you use AI to do the learning for you and the thinking for you. And it shows what actually happens to your brain scientifically. You lose the ability to critically think in the real world if you use it too much. So there's some really great ways we can help students use it the right way. So personalized practice and explanations. I had a student come into my office hours last term in our Calc 2 class. They were struggling with the fundamental theorem of calculus. We all know that's a really hard concept to understand. And so I went through and did my explanation, but then I said, hey guys, if you want to be able to do this on your own, maybe I'm not available, this is a really great way that AI can actually help. And so we asked the AI to explain the fundamental theorem of calculus using an analogy that would help us understand it like we're in fifth grade. Using the like I'm in fifth grade is a perfect one because it really breaks down hard concepts into very simple language and easy to understand. I actually used this Lego analogy that was incredible, and I ended up redoing my video over the fundamental theorem of calculus to use the analogy that they used for the student. Supplementary resources is incredible. So you can have it create videos, visualizations, flashcard creations, quizzes, for the students to be able to use for them to be able to practice and understand. And again, with both of those too, if you have students that English isn't their first language, sometimes when they're learning something in not their native language, they're having to translate that and then understand what they're learning about, and math is a language in itself. And so if I have my students that maybe, English isn't their first language, I'll say, hey, you can go in AI and say, find a video in Spanish over whatever the topic is. And it actually is finding really good, valuable resources. And the YouTube links are channels that I would recommend. Concept clarification, step-by-step problem solving, real-world applications. I use this a lot when I am putting together problems because I want to be able to create like really cool real-world application problems that they can relate to. So like I did a Taylor Swift one because I had like a bunch of Swifties in my class one term about their ticket sales, and it used real data and everything for them to be able to solve a logarithmic equation. And all I said is create an application problem around Taylor Swift using real data where the students will have to solve a logarithmic equation to solve the problem. And it was really neat. This is an image that I made using Gemini where I actually show this image to my students, and I can post this somewhere for you guys to access. But I call it the sandwich method, where you always want to start, no one wants like a open face sandwich because then it gets all messy. We want it closed sandwiches. So the bottom part of the bun and the top bun, that's where the human should always be involved. So the human starts the AI with how we prompt it, what we put in that we want it to give us as an output. AI does its little work, that's the meat. And then we don't just take that output and just believe it. We need to have our human judgment and oversight, that top bun, where we're looking at accuracy, we're looking at bias, we're making sure that we're understanding what it's doing. And then it's continually reiterating our prompt until we get what we're looking for. So this continuous feedback loop. And again, you don't know if AI is giving you wrong information if you don't know what you're doing in the first place. So AI should not be used to do the work for you. You have to understand it first yourself. I also have this framework that I created that's called the check framework. So for AI accountability, I'm not going to have time. I'm going to kind of skip through this to get to some important pieces. I'll make sure I have this posted for you guys. But this is what I have in my syllabus. Anytime you're using AI, you need to always do this. The biggest one is that second C, cite your sources. If you use AI in any way in this class, you have to cite how you used it. So one thing that I've done is I've created this AI chatbot activity. This is posted on this website called Every Learner Everywhere, and it is you can download this and use it yourself if you'd like to. But basically what I did is one of my calculus labs, I had them create an AI chatbot that was an AI tutor chatbot for them. And what's really neat is that this ended up being used. A lot of students are like, oh my gosh, I can now use this for any of my other classes when I'm trying to learn and understand a hard concept. So by telling it, I'm a Calc 2 student, learning how to evaluate definite integrals using U substitution, please act as my tutor and guide me through the following steps. When we tell the AI to act as a tutor, it will put those guardrails on where it will not give them the steps and the answers. It makes them have to work for it. So the first step is explain with words and images how and why U substitution works, like I'm a fifth grader. Include an example so I understand how it works. Ask me to explain the concept back to you in my own words. We all know that students learn much better by doing that. And don't give me practice problems yet. Wait for my explanation. Rate my explanation. If I miss something, help me refine it. Once it's solid, move on to step 4. And then step 4 is giving 3 practice problems, one at a time, varying in difficulty. Wait for me to answer. Don't show me the solution immediately. If I get it wrong, help me figure out my error, then help me understand how to get the right answer by walking me through step by step. After we get the correct answer, give me a similar question so I can ensure I can do it on my own. If I get it right, confirm it and move to the next question. What was so cool about this is students really were able to get that personalized learning, and they were shocked at how it was able to figure out exactly what the misconception was and help correct it. And then what they had to do for this lab is they had to turn in their chat log with the AI. I'm going to show you one other really cool thing that we can use with AI. Kelly, is it okay if I'm just like another 2 minutes? Okay. So in all of these AIs, you can click this little plus button, and all of them have it. So Copilot, Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude, where when you go, you can tell it you want to use. So in ChatGPT and Copilot, it's called study and learn. When they're in this study area, again, it puts those guardrails on where it will never do the work for them. It has them be engaged the entire time. So they can go through and put, like, I don't know how to solve x plus 2 times x minus 1. And it will go through and walk them step by step how to do this, but it's not going to show them the answer. It makes them have to interact with it. So again, you see how it's asking them a question before it does anything next. So it really helps them be engaged in the learning to learn about it. All of them have this. It's called guided learning in Gemini. All right, next little piece. Get back to the PowerPoint. All right, so this again also came from AI for Education. I have this in my syllabus. So you want to use an AI chatbot. I want it to, and then it has all of these different pieces. And so the students have to go through this to figure out if this is inappropriate or not. So this way no one can ever say, I didn't know I couldn't use it for this. And it reminds them they always need to cite the tool that they used and how they used it. And so here's for the citing you cite, you provide the name of the tool, how you used it, and the date it was utilized. So that way we know which model was used. And so it always reminds them as well to verify with known sources, make sure that you're checking for bias and hallucination. So it does go through those processes that we want to ensure our students are doing anytime they use AI. And again, this is straight from one of the downloadable resources on AI for education. There's a video that I have over AI and AI academic integrity. We don't have time to show this, but it's on my YouTube channel. I did bring in AI as well in this video. You're all welcome to use it. I actually have my students watch it and then do a reflection in their discussion board the first week over it to ensure everyone's on the same page about academic integrity. So I can't have someone say, well, I didn't know I couldn't use it that way, because this lays it all out there for them. This is all closed caption, by the way, ADA from compliant from our disability services office at my college. And this YouTube channel is not a monetized YouTube channel. I do not get money when people watch my videos. Another really important thing is to make sure we have our syllabus very clear and explicit. So you can look this up anywhere. I just had this link to show, but if you just Google AI syllabus statements, it will take you to all of these different resources that talk about all of the different AI syllabus statements that you can use. And so for some of them, this one shows, and I'll put this link in here for you guys. It has examples of if you're going to allow students to use AI in any way. There's certain times they can use AI, certain times they can't. These are all these different ways that syllabus statements that are out there. And then obviously you can also say you can never use AI in this class in any way. For me, I have on my syllabus, you cannot use AI on any graded work in this class in any way unless stated otherwise in the directions for the assignment. So like for that chatbot lab, they're able to obviously use AI. But for everything else, I don't want them to use it for anything that's graded, but I do want them to use it for studying and things. Okay. And then this is the last part. What do we do if we think a student used AI wrong or inappropriately? So first of all, don't use those AI checkers. I mean, you can, but they should not be your basis for if a student used AI or not. They are known to be biased, especially against students whose English is not their first language, anyone that's neurodivergent. I've put in my thesis that I wrote, or my grad school paper that I wrote 20 years ago, and it said it was AI. But clearly it wasn't because it was 20 years ago that I wrote it. So just being very careful about that, about those. If you think someone may have used AI inappropriately, this is a syllabus statement that I use. I have this on my YouTube channel. I have a video in the AI tips for teachers where I actually show this and talk about this. So I definitely recommend watching that video for how you handle this. But again, I'm not saying you used it. I know you did. It's just, did you? And then the way that this is written, I worked with our conduct office to really make it positive and kind. And for the most part, students don't get defensive when they get this email. 99% of the time they admit to it. The 1% that they don't, I meet with them. One of the coolest things that you can do is, which now with this new Google thing, obviously there's not a ton of, because the Gemini is not the greatest when it comes to math equations, but if you're doing, so for example, for us, we have these calculus labs, we put all of them into Gemini. We just have to make sure, into Google Docs, you just have to make sure for any equations that you have alt text on them that read the equations off to the student. But by putting this into a Google Doc, I'm able to actually, when I meet with the student, if they say they didn't, I'm like, okay, no problem. Can you share your Google Doc with me? So I'm an editor. When they share it, you can go into the version history of the Google Doc. And when you go into their version history, you can see as they're typing what's happening. It'll update every minute or two if they're actually typing it themselves. If they do a big copy paste, like you can see here, at 6:27, this huge copy paste came in, okay? There's no way that someone could write all of this in 30 seconds. So this was and actually if I took an image of this entire document, it even had on the bottom when they did a copy paste, like chat GPT 4.0. And so I was like, okay. And then you can see them deleting those pieces off as they're going through. And this is how you can catch them using it. Like you did a big copy paste, talk to me about what's going on here. And that's usually when it comes out. This is actually how I caught that someone else did this for a student. The blue was actually a girl. And then this purple is the one student that was actually in my class. The blue is a student that's not in my class. And the purple wrote, what they did is they wrote their name here, and that's in purple. I just couldn't show it. So that's how I was actually able to catch someone that had a different student taking the online class for them. Um, so anyways, there's just some tips on how to handle it. I think this should take you to my website. I do AI trainings for colleges and staff. I'm happy to do that for any of you guys. And I'll be doing a longer workshop, hopefully at AMATYC next year, over this where we can really spend time. Like, I like to have you guys actually get into the AI. So it's hard to do this in like a 50-minute presentation, but hopefully you all got something great out of this that you're able to learn and grow from. And I really appreciate your all patience with me getting on here a minute later. But if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to stand by and hang around.
All right, I'm gonna do one last little spiel from my end, and then you guys can ask anything. Hold on, I'm replacing the current chair. I have my last little slides I have to do as webinar coordinator. If you are inspired by this session to maybe present something of your own, we encourage you to do so. If you go to the AMATYC webinar page, you can find a link to submit your own webinar proposal. You can also just reach out to me and see if you want to just brainstorm and figure out it might be a good space. I want to thank Jessica for an amazing session. I learned a ton. I have a bunch of things that I'm going to use for sure with my students and encourage you all. Jessica did a great job teeing up the webinar I'm going to be doing next month. Next month is that timeline, that deadline for us to have all of our materials accessible. And so I'm trying to get us some additional help, and we'll be leveraging AI, of course. And that's Monday, April 13th. So we'll be looking at how to build accessible math materials, starting from the basics of like what we need for accessibility, and then how the heck do we get this done, or at least started before that deadline. And then we have a Summer Spark coming in June, which is going to be 10 webinars over 2 days. A lot of great presenters coming, so keep an eye out for information about that coming soon. And then hopefully we get to go to a workshop with Jessica in Philadelphia in November.
And also, I don't know if you saw this, Kelly, but just a couple weeks ago, LaTeX just came out with this newest update where LaTeX documents now, you just have to do one little thing with with rendering it, and it now is accessible.
That's amazing. I appreciate that information because
That's-
I've been going out being like, don't use it.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing as well. But now they just came out like 2 weeks ago. I can give you all of the plugin information for that, so that you can share that with people. But also, like Kelly was saying, ChatGPT or any of the AIs, they can go into your LMS and it'll tell you exactly what's not accessible and give you ideas of how to fix it. Awesome. Does anyone have questions? Awesome. Thanks, Elizabeth. Again, I'm sorry. I feel like I talked really fast because this is normally a 4-hour workshop. So I wanted to make sure you guys got all the information.